So for my unit, I did lacrosse. I chose grade level 8 because of the unit outcomes. Psychomotor domain. So my unit goal for the psychomotor is the students will be able to use the skills of lacrosse, such as cradling, scooping, throwing, catching, shooting, offensive strategies, defensive strategies, to participate in competence in various modified and regulation games of lacrosse. I chose 4 benchmarks for that goal, and it includes shooting, throwing with a mature pattern, catching with a mature pattern, and passing and receiving with in combination with locomotor patterns. So like you're catching while you're on the run. My objectives. So the student will be able to demonstrate proper cradling and scooping techniques in a 1v1 game without error. I also put my unit goal there that it goes with my benchmark and my NASB standard. And for some of them, I put the assessment that it goes with. The students will be able to demonstrate the skills needed to throw and catch on the run during ultimate lacrosse. And then I have all my units and assessments. The student will be able to reduce open space on defense by staying on the goal side of the offensive player and reduce the distance between him and her. The students will be able to demonstrate competency in a variety of positions during the modified game. And the student will be able to get open to receive the ball using a V-cut and back overcut 6 out of 10 times. So those are just my psychomotor objectives. The cognitive domain. So my unit goal for the cognitive domain is the students will be able to demonstrate understanding of the rules, regulations, and strategies of the game of lacrosse. And I also have 4 benchmarks. They will be able to describe and apply mechanical advantages for a variety of movement patterns. They will be able to execute at least 3 of the following offensive tactics, so moving to open space, using 5-yard passes. They will be able to reduce open space on defense, and they will be able to explain how their roles change from offense to defense during a game situation. So my objectives. The student will be able to demonstrate an understanding of the grip and stance, so that's probably in the beginning of my lesson, on a written assessment. The student will be able to list the skill cues for throwing and catching during a written assessment. The student will be able to explain how to apply 3 effective throwing and catching strategies in the game of lacrosse. The student will be able to differentiate between throwing and shooting cues by explaining verbally during a modified game. That's a verbal response recorded. And the student will be able to explain how the roles change from offense to defense. So the effective domain. My unit goal for this is the students will exhibit social skills that respect the values of the game of lacrosse, such as sharing responsibilities, mutual cooperation, and strategic discussion. I have 2 benchmarks for this, which is provide encouragement and feedback to peers without prompting from the teacher, and accept the differences among classmates in a physical development, maturation, and varying skill levels by providing encouragement and positive feedback. My objectives that go with this is the students will be able to work cooperatively by encouraging a teammate each time he or she completes a successful catch. Give their partner positive feedback following a shot during the modified practice tasks. Work cooperatively with their teammates throughout the entire modified games, and demonstrate responsibility by returning all the equipment to its designated place at the end of class. Fitness domain. So my goal for this is the students will demonstrate cardiovascular fitness, muscular endurance, muscle strength, participating in various fitness and oriented activities throughout the unit. My benchmarks for this is to identify the 5 components of health-related fitness. So that's muscular strength, endurance, flexibility, cardiovascular. And my objective for this is that the students will be able to identify the components of health-related fitness and how they use the 5 components in the game of lacrosse. My block plan. So my block plan is on Microsoft Word right here. So lessons 1 through 4 or 1 through 3 start about maintaining possession, and it's mostly about passing and receiving. And then I have my objectives there that were in my slide, and I have all of my assessments. Lessons 6 through 10 go with attacking in the goal, creating space to attack. And then I have my first fitness lesson is lesson 9, which is the students will be forming activities in a team marathon. And then the rest of my lessons, they talk about defending, creating space. And I have all of my assessments there to go with each lesson. And at the end of the lesson, obviously, we'll have a culminating activity and a summative assessment. My grading system. So I did a standard-based grading system. So for standard 1, it's 35%, and I have the percentages for each assessment that it goes with. I have 0% for some of them because some of them are pre-assessments or they're student rating scales, but I still put them on there. Standard 2, 30%. Standard 3, I only have a couple assessments, so 5%, but they all add up to 100%. These are my assessments. So lesson 1, we would have a lacrosse pre-assessment. So this was just to get to gauge the students' understanding of the game of lacrosse before we start. So what is the responsibility of the defenseman? And I have multiple choice questions there, or not multiple, yeah, multiple choice questions. And then yeah, lesson 2 is a written cognitive assessment. So it's about cues, so the cues that we went over for that day. And at the end, I put, how do you feel about your ability to throw and catch using the lacrosse stick? Circle the appropriate face, and that's to gauge where my students are at, how they feel with their lacrosse skills. Lesson 3, I did a cognitive and psychomotor easy tag dartfish assessment. So I just put a screenshot of the assessment that I made. So the students would be looking at their students, like move the open space, makes the appropriate pass, would be positive ones, doesn't stand still, and then makes inappropriate decisions. Lesson 4, I have another written cognitive assessment, and then the students are rating themselves based on their ability from a V cut, L cut, and backdoor cut, and they're supposed to circle one response for each cut. So 1 would be I still need work on this. 2, I need a little work. 3, I'm able to use a skill in a game, and 4, I'm a pro at using the skill in a game. And that's just to gauge how students feel about themselves in regards to how they use the cut. My lesson 5, I have a GPAI assessment. Basically, I have a scoring key 1 through 5, similar to the previous one. So 1 very weak, 2 weak performer, 3 moderate. And this looks better on Microsoft Word, but I tried to copy it into so it doesn't look the best, the actual assessment. But on Microsoft Word, I promise you, it looks like doesn't look like that. Lesson 6, I did a Plickers assessment, so I have that over here. So I did a Plicker. So which of these is a lacrosse shooting cue? So I would go by what we did in previous lessons with the students. The act of receiving a pass is called this, catching obviously. What is the one thing we should consider when passing the ball in lacrosse? The answers are bolded. Should our opposite foot be beside the ball when attempting to shovel the ball in lacrosse? So yes. And then how many players are in a standard lacrosse game? So it'd be 16. Or actually more. Okay, after the Plickers, I did for lesson 7, I did a peer assessment on easy tag dartfish. So um, yeah, lesson 8, I did a teacher checklist. So that's just me observing the students and what they're doing during their lesson. And in that lesson, we're talking about calling out a teammate for an open pass. Lesson 9, this is a fitness heart rate lesson. So I'm trying to get students to figure out their target heart rate zone. So these while participating in class activities. So their maximum heart rate 220 minus their age. Lesson 10 is a student self-assessment and checklist for cognitive and effective. So that's our objective is to help a teammate under pressure by offering a passing option to them behind the net. Place a check mark if you have helped your teammate under pressure and give them a passing option in the table below. In the second table, place a check mark if you also called out your teammate's name while supporting them to give them a pass. So that's also going back to previous lessons, making sure students aren't forgetting what I'm teaching them. Lesson 11, we have another teacher assessment. So this would be if students put equipment away, I would write the student's name, put a check mark if they did that or not. A written cognitive summative assessment in lesson 12. So I have 5 short answer questions and multiple choice questions. Lesson 15, we got into a psychomotor self-assessment on offensive strategies. So the directions would be at the end of today's lesson, write what your team's offensive goal was. So this is getting more into teams, so we put them in teams. So the leaders will come out and talk, and like they'll be able to listen to each other. And how do you feel you contributed to your team's goal and strategy? So trying to gauge what students think. Lesson 16 is a psychomotor student rating scale. So rate yourself based on the skill and your ability to defend the goal and stay in between your opponent and the ball. So 1 through 4, 1 being you need a lot of work and 4 being you're a pro. Lesson 17, we did a similar fitness circuit, but also we're going back to a previous lesson, so we used heart rate. Lesson 20, we did GPAI cumulative activity assessment in 11v11, which is our culminating activity. That was what we were trying to get to. So skill execution, was the player able to make an accurate and conceivable pass? Was the player about to receive the pass during the game? So this gets into student game decision making, which is what we want to do. And there's also a personal assessment at the end for lesson 20. And that's it.